January 3, 1943. 22,000 feet above Nazi-occupied France. Alan McGee was trapped inside his B-17's ball turret when a German shell tore through the aircraft. In seconds, the bomber exploded into a fireball. McGee was ripped from his turret and began falling through freezing air at over 120 miles per hour. No parachute. For miles to the ground. What happened next defied every law of survival. Alan Eugene McGee was just 23 years old when he climbed into that ball turret for what should have been a routine bombing mission over Saint-Nazaire, France. He was from Plainfield, New Jersey, a ball turret gunner with the 360th Bombardment Squadron, 303rd Bombardment Group. His friends called him Snuffy. He'd survived dozens of missions, but January 3rd would be different. The ball turret was already the most terrifying position on a B-17. A plexiglass and metal sphere hanging from the belly of the aircraft, barely 4 feet in diameter. Gunners had to curl into a fetal position with their knees pulled up to their chest. The only thing between you and empty space was thin armor plating in glass. You couldn't wear a parachute inside because there simply wasn't room. If the plane went down, you had to crawl out, climb back into the fuselage, grab your chute, and then bail out. In an emergency, most ball turret gunners never made it out. That morning, McGee's crew took off from Molesworth, England as part of a massive bombing raid targeting German U-boat pens at Saint-Nazaire. Over 80 B-17s filled the sky, flying in tight formation. The target was heavily defended. German anti-aircraft batteries lined the coast, and Luftwaffe fighters were scrambling to intercept. Every man on that mission knew this wouldn't be easy. As they approached the target, the flak started. Black puffs of exploding shells filled the sky around them. The B-17 shook with each nearby blast. McGee, suspended in his turret beneath the plane, scanned the sky for German fighters. Then he saw them. Focke-Wulf 190s diving through the formation, guns blazing. One FW-190 came straight at McGee's bomber from below. He squeezed his triggers, firing his twin .50 caliber machine guns. Tracer rounds streaked through the air. The German fighter broke off, but another took its place. Then another. The air was filled with the sound of gunfire, explosions, and the roar of engines. McGee kept firing. That's when he felt it. A massive impact. A German 20mm cannon shell had punched through the right-wing fuel tank. Aviation fuel exploded instantly. The right wing erupted in flames. Within seconds, fire was spreading through the fuselage. The aircraft shuddered violently. McGee looked up through the plexiglass above his head and saw smoke pouring into the bomber. He knew what this meant. He immediately tried to rotate his turret to the exit position so he could climb out. But the turret mechanism was jammed. The explosion had damaged the hydraulics. He frantically tried the manual hand crank. Nothing. He was trapped inside a burning bomber falling out of the sky, locked in a 4-foot metal sphere with no parachute. The B-17 started breaking apart. Metal screamed against metal. The centrifugal forces from the spinning, falling aircraft pinned McGee against the turret walls. He could feel the temperature rising as flames engulfed the fuselage above him. Then, the unthinkable happened. The entire ball turret assembly ripped away from the aircraft. One moment McGee was trapped inside a disintegrating bomber, the next he was falling free through the sky, still curled inside the shattered remains of his turret. The plexiglass had blown out. Freezing air at 120 miles per hour blasted into the turret. The temperature was 50 degrees below zero. McGee tumbled through the air. The turret broke apart around him. Pieces of metal, his guns, everything scattered into the void. And then he was falling alone. No parachute. No way to slow down. For miles above the earth. He had roughly 90 seconds before impact. Most people would panic. Most would lose consciousness from the terror and the lack of oxygen at that altitude. But McGee stayed awake. He later said he remembered the entire fall. He watched the ground rushing up to meet him. He saw the French countryside, the buildings, the streets of Saint-Nazaire growing larger and larger. He knew he was going to die. His body tumbled and spun, completely out of control. At that speed, hitting the ground would be like hitting concrete at 120 miles per hour. Every bone in his body would shatter. He would be dead instantly. There was no survival scenario. It was impossible, but sometimes, impossible things happen. As McGee fell those final 1,000 feet, he crashed through the glass roof of the Saint-Nazaire train station. The glass slowed him slightly, cutting his body but breaking his fall. He then smashed through the metal and wood framework of the station roof, which slowed him more. Finally, he hit the stone floor of the station and bounced once before coming to rest. German soldiers stationed at the train station rushed over, expecting to find a mangled corpse. Instead, they found Alan McGee still breathing. Barely alive, but alive. His right arm was nearly severed. 28 shrapnel wounds covered his body. His right leg was shattered. Several ribs were broken. His nose was crushed. One lung was collapsed. Both of his kidneys were damaged. His skull was fractured. But his heart was still beating. The German soldiers couldn't believe what they were seeing. One of them, a medic, immediately began treating him. They transported him to a German military hospital where doctors worked frantically to save his life. The German medical staff was astounded. They had never seen anything like this. A man who fell 4 miles without a parachute and survived. For the next several days, McGee drifted in and out of consciousness. The doctors operated multiple times, removing shrapnel, setting bones, trying to repair the massive internal damage. Against all odds, he stabilized. His body, broken as it was, refused to give up. Once he recovered enough to be moved, the Germans transferred him to a prisoner of war camp. He spent the rest of the war as a POW, enduring the harsh conditions of German captivity. His injuries never fully healed. He walked with a limp for the rest of his life. But he walked. He was alive. When the war ended in 1945, McGee returned home to New Jersey. The military investigated his story because it seemed too incredible to be true. But the German hospital records confirmed it. The train station damage was documented. Witness statements from German soldiers verified every detail. Alan McGee had indeed fallen 22,000 feet without a parachute and lived to tell about it, so how did he survive? Experts have analyzed this case for decades. The combination of factors that saved his life was extraordinary. First, the glass roof slowed his descent slightly. Then the metal framework absorbed more impact. The stone floor, while hard, was better than hitting earth at an angle. Some researchers believe he may have been falling in a flat, spread-eagle position at the moment of impact, distributing the force across his entire body rather than concentrating it on one point. Others suggest the extreme cold at altitude may have slowed his metabolism, protecting his organs. And perhaps most importantly, he was young, strong, and in peak physical condition. But even with all those factors, survival was astronomically unlikely. McGee himself never fully understood how he lived. He simply said he was lucky. Lucky that the train station was there. Lucky that German medics saved him. Lucky that his body could endure what should have been fatal. Alan McGee lived until 2003, passing away at the age of 84. He rarely talked about his fall. When people asked him about it, he would simply say it was the worst experience of his life and he preferred not to relive it. But his story remains one of the most remarkable survival tales in military history. Of the 10 men aboard McGee's B-17 that day, he was one of only 2 survivors. The other crewmen had bailed out with a parachute before the plane exploded. Every other man perished. McGee should have been among them. By every calculation, every law of physics, every medical expectation, he should have died. But he didn't. The ball turret gunners of World War II faced death every time they climbed into that position. Trapped in a metal sphere beneath the aircraft, unable to escape quickly, unable to wear a parachute. They knew the risks. They did it anyway. And on January 3, 1943, one of them proved that even when death seems certain, even when falling 4 miles from the sky, survival is sometimes possible. If you found this story incredible, hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from World War II. And let me know in the comments what other gunner stories you want to hear next.